What if Tony Stark swallowed his pride during the superhero Civil War? Before the first big battle between Team Cap and Team Iron Man, there's a pivotal moment where Tony asks Steve for time to talk. As Steve agrees and shakes his hand, it turns out he had a specialized EMP that he placed on Tony's suit he uses to create a tactical advantage. After the Civil War ended and Steve Rogers has died, we see Tony Stark mourning by his graveside when he's approached by a random stranger. A stranger who tells him about different fates and different universes. See, because in this universe, when he asked Captain America to cease fire and talk for a minute, Tony does one small difference. He's honest with Steve. Shaking hands, he tells him that he believes in what he's doing, but he needs to make sure he's doing it the right way. He needs somebody that he can trust to stay beside him through all of this and coach him through it. He needs Cap's help. With that simple admission, Steve doesn't put the EMP on Tony's suit. He tells him, fine, let's talk. Because of this, when Tony's Abomination cyborg clone of Thor shows up, he doesn't kill Bill Foster. Because Tony's not distracted at this point in time, he jumps in front of the blast and saves Bill's life. When Iron Man falls to the ground from the force of this, Steve is there to step up and defend him. Now, on a unified front, all of these heroes fight together to take on this soulless abomination of their friend. Together they succeeded, and no lives were lost that day. Afterwards, when Steve and Tony have their sit down to hash things out, Iron Man comes up with one simple solution. He tells Cap, you do it. He tells Steve that he stood by him when they confronted the Young Avengers about being reckless and untrained. Steve doesn't disagree with the philosophy behind the Superhero Registration Act, he just doesn't trust the government's oversight in executing it. So, the simple solution is let Steve run it. But Steve doesn't agree. He tells him no, he doesn't think he's qualified for something like this. Tony tells him that he's literally the only person in the world that every hero would trust with their identities. Let's just take the government out of this and let the Avengers police it. And they'll work with them like they always have, but at the end of the day, it will be the Avengers training the young heroes and policing people when they step out of line. Tony tells his best friend that this is the only way they can do this that doesn't end in blood. Steve still has plenty of concerns about the security risk of just one man being responsible for all that information, but Tony eases his mind and tells him he has plenty of plans in place. When Cap still isn't sure, Tony tells him simply, it's not enough to stand up against something, but you have to stand for something better. So Tony goes in front of the press and announces their plan to the world. The only thing is, he never told the president or Maria Hill or S.H.I.E.L.D. about what he was doing. Because Tony knew that they just simply wouldn't agree, but after seeing the public reception and the polls after all of this came out, they have no other choice. The American people love this idea. Just like that, all of the heroes are united under one name, the Avengers. Young superhumans are properly trained by their elders, only serving and fighting if they choose to. They're taught responsibility, ethics, and tactics, all the while their identities protected. When a hero did step out of line and discipline was necessary, it was brought down by their brothers and sisters swiftly and justly. Sitting in their office, the two best friends are working together on what was seemingly an impossibly perfect scenario. Tony looks at Cap and tells him, I'm glad we worked things out, as Steve agrees and says, so am I.